The email arrived precisely at 2:30 a.m., just as the cabin lights dimmed and the Sao Paulo skyline disappeared beneath a blanket of clouds. The subject line read, "Termination notice effective immediately." For a few moments, I couldn't fully grasp what I was seeing. I blinked repeatedly, thinking maybe the page hadn't loaded properly, but it had. Everything was clear and unmistakable. My name appeared, my position, and then the words that made my heart sink deep into my chest. Your employment with Venturon Technologies has been terminated. Effective immediately. Your access has been revoked. Please do not return to any company property. No phone call, no meeting, no gratitude. Just this cold, impersonal final notice. And the sender was Grayson Hart himself, the CEO, the same man who shook my hand just 2 weeks earlier and said, "You're the only one I trust to pull this off." I glanced around the cabin. Everyone else was asleep, curled up in their business class pods, wearing eye masks, their pillows marked by wine stains. I was alone with the constant hum of the jet engines and a silence that suddenly felt louder than anything I had ever experienced. 10 days, 3 continents, Tokyo for initial alignment, London for compliance, São Paulo for the close I hadn't merely been part of this deal. I had built it 3 global giants making a coordinated move onto Venturon's cloud system, a deal worth $1.5 billion over 5 years. And now, I was no longer part of the company. A cold weight settled in my chest, not anger yet, just disbelief, like the ground had been pulled out from beneath me mid-step. I stared at my laptop for a full minute before silently reaching under my seat for a second laptop. Matte black, unbranded, encrypted. The one no one at Venturon knew existed. I powered it on, logged in, watched the screen come to life, and smiled. They believed this was the end of my journey, but they had no clue I had already begun a new one 3 weeks before I was back in that same glass-walled boardroom on the 32nd floor, watching grown men scramble to salvage a collapsing $400 million contract. The client, a notoriously tough European consortium, had walked out halfway through negotiations. Legal was in chaos, finance was blaming others, and the VP of Global Sales was nearly in tears. I didn't wait to be asked. I stepped in, grabbed the abandoned proposal off the table, rewrote its core structure in 20 minutes, and secured a private call with the consortium's lead delegate. By the next morning, not only was the contract saved, but it had been expanded to include 2 new territories. That wasn't my first miracle for Venturon, just the most recent after the win. The executive lounge echoed with champagne toasts and applause. Grayson gave one of his hollow smiles and said, "Now that's the kind of leadership we need at the next level." Rumors of a promotion to Executive Vice President of Global Strategy slipped quietly through the hallway. The title sounded absurdly grand, long overdue. Because I wasn't just a closer. I was the firewall, the one they called when the suits couldn't land the deal I'd negotiated with energy titans, telecom empires, and foreign ministries. I spoke 4 languages, juggled 2 phones, and had lived out of airports for 7 years. I made Venturon appear far steadier than it really was. And yet, that title never came. A week after the champagne celebrations, I was told the promotion was underway, then under review, and then nothing at first. I chalked it up to paranoia. Maybe it was restructuring, maybe HR was slow. Maybe it wasn't personal this time. Then I overheard it, during a board lunch while I was in the adjacent conference room prepping a portfolio. The sliding door had been left slightly ajar. "Come on!" One board member laughed. "Marin's brilliant, but let's be real. She walks into a room and no man wants to talk. She dominates every pitch." Another replied, "Yeah, she's not exactly EVP material, more like field ops." Field ops, Like I was just a glorified negotiator they could fly around and then forget. That moment stuck with me longer than the missed promotion, because the truth was clear. They didn't want to elevate me. They wanted to contain me. Too confident, too polished, too many wins that couldn't be reassigned to anyone else. I was the one they called when deals needed saving, but never the one they wanted at the table to take credit. Standing there in that empty conference room, clutching the portfolio I had spent weeks crafting, I realized something bitter but undeniable. It wasn't about merit. It was about threat perception. The quiet ones rose. The loud ones, especially ones like me, were sidelined. Yet, I didn't storm out or raise hell. I returned to my desk, booked 3 back-to-back international flights, and dove into the biggest deal in company history. Because if they wouldn't give me the title, I would create one of my own. Betrayal rarely crashes loudly. It seeps in slowly like a leak, unnoticed until you find yourself standing in ankle-deep water, wondering when it all began. A year earlier, Mallory Hart had landed in trouble, recently hired as a strategic advisor at Venturon, a vague role cushioned by legacy. She was Grayson's daughter. With no technical background, just 2 years in corporate, and a massive mistake. An unauthorized data transfer during a client demo that exposed personal info from a pilot partner in Singapore. It should have been a scandal. The legal team panicked. Marketing froze. Grayson called me, "Clean it up quietly," he said. She didn't mean to. She just didn't know. I didn't argue. I pulled every string I had, worked non-stop to contain the leak, spinning the incident into a beta testing glitch that never left the trade blogs. I even took the media call myself to keep her name out of the press. No one thanked me. I didn't ask for thanks. I told myself it was loyalty. Protecting the company meant protecting everyone in it, even the CEO's daughter. But loyalty rots when it's one-sided 3 days before my intercontinental trip. I opened a shared drive to finalize pitch materials for the Trident deal. The slides I'd refined for weeks, charts, analytics, proposal structure, all precisely arranged. They were perfect, exactly how I left them, except one detail. The author in the document properties was listed as Mallory Hart. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she'd downloaded and accidentally saved over them, but as I flipped through the deck, it became clear she'd made subtle edits, rephrasing bullet points, tweaking the layout, but kept my entire structure intact. The bones were mine, the pitch was mine, but the name on it was not. She hadn't even thought to inform me that night. I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights glowing softly beyond the window as I stared at the slide deck until the words began to blur. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I closed it. I didn't confront her, didn't message Grayson, didn't tell a single soul because deep down, I already knew how it would play out. They'd write it off as collaboration. They'd say I was overthinking it worse. They'd label me as territorial or overly emotional. That word always surfaces when a woman dares to challenge power. So I stayed silent. I packed my bags, finalized my flights, and convinced myself it didn't matter. But it did. The pain wasn't loud or explosive. It seeped in slowly, every time someone praised her strategic insight. Every time I sat through meetings and heard her recite my words as if they were hers, I had shielded her, covered for her, saved her reputation. And now, she was erasing mine. Panic has never been my style. Not when deals fall apart, not when executives crack under pressure, and certainly not when my own future starts to shift beneath me. So when it became clear the promotion wasn't coming, when I saw Mallory's name on my slides and felt the weight of erasure pressing down, I didn't shout or storm off. Instead, I pivoted, quietly, strategically. The truth was, I had already begun building my safety net 6 months earlier, not because I expected betrayal, but because experience had taught me this. Power respects leverage, not loyalty. Venturon wasn't always the company it is now. When I joined, it was scrappy, hungry, still climbing toward mid-tier status, filled with sharp minds and real ambition. Over time, as investors poured in and politics took hold, the company's soul shifted. Grayson stopped hiring the best and began promoting the safest. The innovation team was gutted, compliance weaponized, and anyone with independent ideas was gradually pushed out. Many of those people were my friends, some mentors all of us had quietly kept building, just no longer for Venturon. I named the project Travant. No flashy pitch decks, no seed round fanfare. Just a name, a legal structure, and a growing team of former engineers, product strategists, and compliance specialists who understood what it meant to be left behind by the very machine they helped build. Travant was designed to fix exactly what Venturon had broken. Agility instead of bureaucracy, transparency instead of control, and above all, client-centered thinking. We kept it quiet. We didn't announce it. It wasn't a revenge play, but a future waiting to be realized. Still, I stayed under the radar. I was under contract, still earning their trust, and had no intention of burning bridges unless someone else struck the match first. That moment came sooner than I expected. It happened over a long dinner in Sao Paulo, sitting across from Luiz Mata, the CEO of Brazil's legacy firm, one of the three in the Trident deal. We'd just wrapped the third round of proposal fine-tuning. He nursed a glass of whiskey, tie loosened, the weight of billion-dollar decisions briefly lifted from his shoulders. He looked at me with quiet seriousness and asked a question I wasn't ready for. What would it take for you to lead instead of follow? I paused, and he continued. Fork halfway to your mouth. You don't talk like an employee. You speak like someone who built something from scratch. So why aren't you running the company? I laughed softly. Someone else had inherited it. He smiled, but didn't laugh. But if you ever decide to change that, call me. Some of us prefer backing leaders, not logos. That moment stuck with me, not because it flattered me, though it did, but because it reflected everything I'd been trying to ignore. Clients sensed it too. They saw the gap between the people doing the work and those taking the credit. They noticed the political appointments, the weakened innovation, the awkward silences after strong results. And they were watching me, waiting. When I got back to New York, I kept what Louise said to myself. I didn't mention the side calls from Telnova's procurement director or the subtle probes from Eurocom's legal team about alternate partnership models. But I did expand Travant's scope. I scheduled discrete meetings with my core team, former legal lead Jenna Park, systems architect Raheem Silva, and ex-finance strategist Noah Tan. We avoided company emails and offices, meeting instead in apartments over dinners on encrypted channels. Everything was coming together. Venturon thought I was just the closer, but I had already started something they couldn't see, a company that closed deals not with power, but with purpose. If anyone had stepped into the executive ballroom without context, they'd think it was a coronation, gold linens, crystal chandeliers, a live quartet. The company spared no expense for the strategic growth gala, which was really a celebration of Mallory Hart's sudden promotion to Vice President of International Strategy. The irony was bitter. I had literally built that department from the ground up, working across 3 time zones out of a suitcase. Convincing European partners Venturon was more than just another over-promising tech firm. Back when international strategy was considered too ambitious for a mid-tier company barely holding its domestic market, I carved that path with grit, late-night flights, and fluency in 6-letter acronyms. And now, here I was, standing beneath a chandelier, smiling through clenched teeth, holding a champagne glass I hadn't touched, pretending to toast the woman who had taken my title, my team, and my story. Mallory was radiant. Blonde blowout, sleek navy sheath dress, rehearsed talking points. She clinked glasses with board members and dropped buzzwords like multilateral integration and cross-border scalability, while the PR team captured it all. "Thank you all," she said, lifting her glass. It's an honor to take on this role and continue the strategic vision our company has pioneered. I stood just behind her, half in the spotlight, half in shadow. No mention of my name, not a single reference to the deals I had closed in Tokyo, or the negotiation frameworks I had created. Jenna Park, my former legal partner, and now one of Travant's founding members, brushed past me and whispered behind her glass, "This is surreal." Surreal was generous. People I had worked alongside for years now avoided my gaze. A few of the decent ones offered awkward half-smiles, the kind that said, "I know this is wrong, but I want to keep my job." Toward the end, Grayson took the microphone, still tall, still smug in his perfectly tailored suit. He spoke with a voice that could convince even the most skeptical crowd of his sincerity. "We've seen Mallory grow into this position," he started, "and I can think of no better person to lead our biggest initiative yet, the global expansion through the Trident Partnership." I froze in place. Applause erupted around the room. Then, shifting slightly, he added, "She'll be shadowing Marin on the upcoming trip as part of the transition." Shadowing me, as if I were her guide, as if I had agreed to train the woman who had claimed the title meant for me, in a department I had built from the ground up, working on a deal I was about to finalize after 10 months of non-stop effort spanning time zones. My stomach clenched. I wanted to laugh, scream, or toss my champagne at the ice sculpture shaped like a globe. Instead, I nodded and forced a practiced, composed smile. The applause continued, but inside it sounded like nails scratching glass against my skull. Humiliation burned beneath my skin, not because they replaced me, but because they expected me to assist her transition quietly, gracefully, like a soldier who knows when to disappear. I inhaled deeply and took my first sip of champagne. It was flat. Mallory leaned in with warmth and rehearsed charm. "I hope we can discuss the Sao Paulo structure before the meetings. I'm still catching up on some of the European details." "You should," I replied evenly. "They tend to ask the hard questions." She giggled. "Well, I'll just point them to you. You always know what to say." I smiled, the kind of smile that comes right before the drawbridge rises, because I already knew she wouldn't be attending. They didn't realize it yet, but I had already booked a second itinerary, one that excluded her, Grayson, and anyone from the company that had just buried my name beneath a polished job title. By the time I touched down in Tokyo, I hadn't slept properly in 4 days. The gala, the fake congratulations, Mallory's smug request to review the Sao Paulo structure, Grayson's backhanded announcement. It had all worn me down to my core, but none of that mattered now, because what awaited me beyond customs was bigger than my bruised pride. The Trident Deal 3 legacy telecom giants, Telnova in Tokyo, Eurocom in London, and Brassilink in Sao Paulo, joining forces in a landmark cloud migration. It took me 10 months of discreet introductions, cultural navigation, and trust building to get them to the table. Now I had 10 days to seal the deal. 3 cities, 3 continents, 0 margin for error. In Tokyo, tension hit immediately. Telnova's CTO, Yuki Asano, was sharp, skeptical, and direct. "You promise security, but so do your competitors. Why should we believe you offer more than just words?" he asked, even before the tea arrived. I brought up the encryption specification sheet I designed with Venturon's engineers, a document the board hadn't even reviewed, and walked him through the exact protocols tailored for multi-jurisdictional compliance, real-time redundancy, zero-trust architecture. When I finished, he didn't smile. He just nodded. "I see why they send you," he said. "The others speak, but they don't understand." Afterward, we walked briefly to his car. I paused, then quietly asked, "What if there was a leaner model? Same tech stack, but fewer layers between need and delivery?" Yuki turned his head. "You mean less Venturon on something like that?" He didn't answer, but as he got in, he glanced back and said, "Send the materials privately again." In London, Eurocom's legal team was even more cautious. Brexit's regulatory changes had made compliance complicated, and Venturon's standard contract language was full of loopholes. I'd pointed this out before. They hadn't fixed it, so I did it myself. At 11:40 p.m., in a small flat I rented for 2 nights, I rewrote the terms using templates developed quietly by Travant's counsel, led by Jenna Park. The next morning, I handed over the revised drafts across the glossy table at Eurocom's headquarters. The general counsel, a no-nonsense woman named Linda Clark, raised an eyebrow. "This isn't the Venturon standard," she said. "It's the one that works," I replied, "unless you prefer a 3-week delay and 50 redlined changes." She skimmed the top page. "You did this?" "Yes, off the record." Linda smiled. "Maybe next time we negotiate, you'll be sitting on this side of the table." Something stirred inside me. She wasn't just impressed. She was suggesting, questioning why I wasn't already leading the company I represented. And she wasn't alone. When I arrived in Sao Paulo, running on caffeine and willpower, the Brazil meeting was the final stretch. Financial structure, revenue sharing, data sovereignty. Every red flag gathered in one room. Worse, Mallory was supposed to attend, shadowing me. She didn't show I knew she wouldn't. I had changed the itinerary last minute, routing myself through Argentina to prevent any internal tracking of my real-time movements. Venturon thought I'd arrive a day later. I was already on site, already working. The meeting with CEO Luis Mata lasted 4 hours. He grilled me on risk thresholds, capital exposure, and long-term support models. When I stood firm on the numbers, the very figures the board resisted, I saw him lean back and exhale. "I trust you, Marin," he said, tapping the table. "But I don't trust Venturon. You know that, right?" "I do." "So if this falls apart later—" "It won't," he said carefully. "Unless you leave." That's when I leaned forward. "And if there was a way," I said quietly, "for you to secure this deal without the risk, politics, noise, and bottlenecks, would you be open to that?" Louise didn't hesitate. "You know the answer. 3 cities, 3 meetings, 3 seeds quietly planted, each with the same pattern. Skepticism toward Venturon, trust in me. Not the brand I bore the company's weight across hemispheres, time zones, and exhaustion. I anticipated questions before they were asked, rewrote contracts on my own time, and stood between billion-dollar doubts and billion-dollar commitments. But I wasn't just closing a deal. I was opening a door." The cabin lights dimmed as we crossed the equator. I'd been gazing out into the vast darkness stretching endlessly below. When I opened my laptop to review the Sao Paulo meeting notes one last time, the contract summary was flawless. The numbers aligned. The client was secured. The deal was done. It should have been the crowning achievement of my career. Instead, the screen flickered. The internal server booted me out. I tried again. Access denied. I opened Slack session expired. My company calendar disappeared. My Outlook went blank then. An email subject line flashed. Termination notification effective immediately. The sender was Grayson Hart. I read the opening line and felt my chest tighten as if gripped by a vice. "Marin, effective immediately. Your employment with Venturon Technologies is terminated. All credentials and accesses have been revoked per our protocol. Please refrain from engaging with any company clients or partners moving forward." No greeting, no thanks, no explanation. Just a cold blade slid quietly between my ribs at 35,000 feet in the air. For a moment, I sat frozen. Flight attendants moved silently down the aisle, collecting half-empty wine glasses from the late-night service around me. The other business travelers slept under beige blankets. Blissfully unaware, my laptop screen blinked once more before going black. They had locked me out of everything. I grabbed my phone. Same result, VPN blocked credentials invalid. Even my internal contacts were gone. They had erased me. No warning, no meeting, no chance to defend myself. This wasn't restructuring, it was execution, and the insult cut deeper than the decision they didn't even wait for my landing. No decency to face me. They fired me in silence while I was alone midair. Fresh from closing the company's biggest deal, rage should have been my first feeling. And maybe somewhere deep inside it was. But mostly I felt insulted not for losing the job, but because they treated me as disposable, replaceable, powerless. They fired the person who had carried their entire international growth strategy on her back. They thought cutting access meant cutting control, revoking email meant revoking influence, that I had no backup. They were wrong. 6 weeks earlier, well before Grayson's quiet power plays, and before Mallory's fake promotion, I'd followed protocol and created a private backup of my Trident deal notes. The legal team approved it as a precaution. Standard for complex cross-border deals, I had everything. Pitch decks, contract drafts, financial models, call transcripts, even handwritten client feedback. They said I wasn't allowed to contact clients. They forgot I was the only reason those clients stayed engaged. I reached under my seat and pulled out the matte black laptop I never synced with Venturon systems, placed it on the tray table. It hummed softly to life, encrypted, offline, untouchable. The wallpaper glowed dimly, a simple, half-finished logo, Travant. I opened the encrypted folder, every market strategy, every clause in every contract version, secure, legally sound, mine, finally. The fury flickered, not as fire, but as resolve. Grayson hadn't just fired me. He'd freed me. They thought cutting me loose mid-flight would break me, but it only severed the rope holding me back. I opened a blank document, placed my fingers on the keyboard, and typed 3 simple words. Let's begin. Then I closed the lid and leaned back. Outside, the sky remained pitch black, but for the first time in months, I saw a clear horizon. The city looked unchanged. From the back seat of a taxi, I watched the skyline drift by, steel and glass towers basking in late morning sun, yellow cabs weaving between them, pedestrians rushing with coffees and phones as if nothing had shifted. But for me, everything had changed. It was 8:40 a.m. when we pulled up to Venturon headquarters. I hesitated before stepping out, staring at the building I'd entered nearly every day for 9 years. It seemed smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just saw it differently now. Less like home, more like a place that never truly belonged to me inside the marble-floored lobby. The security guard, Daniel, who once greeted me with a grin, froze. "Ms. Blake," he said, shifting awkwardly. "I wasn't told you'd be coming today." "I wasn't told I wouldn't," I said calmly, holding up my badge and pressing it against the gate. Nothing red light access denied. Daniel winced. "I'm really sorry HR flagged the system this morning." I nodded without arguing. It wasn't his fault. He looked more uncomfortable than I did, but standing there, half inside, half outside the place I'd given the best years of my life, a strange feeling washed over me. Not anger, not grief, just displacement. Like a ghost haunting a life that no longer existed. I waited for the elevator anyway. The receptionist didn't greet me, barely glanced up. Someone had removed my name from the board outside the 27th floor meeting room. The digital display now read, Strategic Integration, VPM Heart. By the time I reached my old floor, silence felt surgical. Every familiar face avoided eye contact. Junior analysts who used to eagerly update me stared into their screens. One quietly stood and slipped toward the break room as I stepped off the elevator. No welcome, no questions, no curiosity. My desk was stripped bare. The plants I'd kept alive through jet lag and budget cuts were gone. The framed client thank you letter from Eurocom vanished. Even my chair had been replaced. Newer model, tag still hanging. I stood staring at the empty surface where my entire professional identity had lived, my nameplate, removed, not moved. Removed nearby, a copy of the internal newsletter caught my eye. The headline read, Mallory Hart to lead Trident Partnership in Global Expansion Push. I picked it up and scanned the article. Following Marin Blake's departure, VP Mallory Hart will assume full control of Trident Client Integration Strategy. A sanitized word for what really happened. No credit for the woman who built the deal, flew across 3 continents to negotiate it, or personally saved 2 of the 3 contracts from collapse. I dropped the newsletter into the trash and left outside. The city felt louder than before, the honks sharper, the air colder, people rushing past, none aware or caring that I'd just been erased. I walked a few blocks to the old hotel I used to stay at between international flights. They knew me there. No one asked questions. They gave me a room on the 15th floor overlooking the river. I closed the curtains, kicked off my shoes, sat on the bed's edge, and for the first time in days, let myself feel it. The hollow space, not grief or defeat, but the bitter realization that the place I poured myself into never truly saw me. They used my brain, my voice, my presence. And now, with a swipe of a keycard and a press release, I had been deleted like a forgotten line in an outdated spreadsheet. But I wasn't broken. I was free. I pulled out my laptop. The one they hadn't shut down I powered on the other laptop. The Black Maddie machine that still held the future I'd been quietly building. Opening the secure client portal that Jenna and Raheem helped design, I admired its flawless encryption. Clean, reliable, and ready. I accessed the contact list. Louise Mata, Yukio Asano, Linda Clark. Without hesitation, I fired off 3 emails, each containing just 4 words. The door is open. The morning after sending those messages, I sat silently with a black coffee and an untouched croissant. My laptop lay open beside me in the stillness. No celebration, no champagne, no flurry of replies. Just the quiet calm before the storm. I knew what was unfolding back at Venturon. Grayson would enter the Monday executive meeting already tense. Perhaps his assistant handed him a printout on the Trident accounts. But this time, there was no momentum, no client enthusiasm, no updates from me, because I was no longer part of their side. Nor, it seemed, were the clients. Jenna, who still had legal contacts, told me Grayson called Yuki Asano at 9:15 a.m. No answer. A second call 20 minutes later. Still nothing by 10 a.m. He involved Mallory and the interim strategy team. They next tried Eurocom Linda Clark, usually prompt and sharp. Let the phone ring 7 times before it went to voicemail. Follow-up emails sent at 10:40 a.m. to her office, and legal team both bounced back. Out of office, please contact your current point person. Yet no one knew who that was anymore. By 11:30, panic had set in. They called Brazzalink. Louise Mata's assistant said he was unavailable. Unavailable today? Grayson pressed calmly. She replied, Unavailable for Venturon. Speechless, Grayson demanded answers, but the line went dead. In my hotel suite, I quietly refreshed the client dashboard. Trevant's new portal, built on Raheem's design, logged every client interaction with encrypted precision. It was more than smart. It was invisible. No public announcements, no fanfare, just clean, secure, human-centered onboarding. Within an hour of my email, all 3 clients logged and each booked exploratory sessions with the Trevant team. No drama, no conflict, no lawsuits, just silence. The kind of silence that says everything it showed who still held the conversation and who had lost it. Venturon wasn't under attack. It was being ignored for a company like that. Silence isn't absence. It's a verdict around 1 p.m. Grayson made a last move. Investor Relations reached out publicly to all 3 clients, framing it as a consolidation update and requesting joint press statements reaffirming Venturon's leadership on Trident. Only one replied, with a brief, unsigned message. Venturon no longer speaks for us, you do. I stared long at those words, simple, raw, yet heavier than any title Venturon had given me. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood and looked out a floor-to-ceiling window. The city pulsed below, oblivious to the quiet unraveling 32 floors up where I once sat. The company that fired me silently was now losing deals in a language it no longer understood. Not loud, not public, just vanished. Jenna called that evening. "They're scrambling," she said. "Mallory's panicking Grayson suspects you, but no proof the clients won't return calls." "They don't have to," I answered. "Are you sure you don't want to go public? Make a statement?" I glanced at the glowing Trevant homepage Rahim had launched. No founder page, no biography, just a logo, a footer code line, and a promise. "What we build belongs to those who build it." "No," I said softly. "Let them stew in silence a while longer." This wasn't revenge. It was clarity, quiet, resolute, and just beginning. At 9:30 a.m., the press release went live. No banners, no launch parties, no viral LinkedIn posts. Just a sleek announcement via Trevant's media portal, sent quietly and irreversibly. Trevant Inc. proudly announces a multi-continent strategic partnership with Telnova, Eurocom, and Brazil Inc. Valued at $1.5 billion over 7 years, this agreement delivers secure, modular cloud integration across 3 regions, redefining global enterprise connectivity for media inquiries. press@trevant.tech. Signed, Marin Blake, CEO. That was it. No mention of Venturon. No fanfare, only precision and presence by 10 a.m. Emails flooded in. Not from former colleagues, but from journalists, analysts, and VC scouts who'd never heard of Trevant until that morning. They wanted to know how a company with no website until last week pulled off acquiring 3 legacy clients so seamlessly in one stroke by 10:45, the first trade article published. Then 2 more, then 6. At 11:15, TechWatch Global ran a headline that made me lean back, sip tea, and smile. "The silent takeover. Who is Trevant? And why is Venturon panicking?" Inside Venturon's glass tower, silence morphed into chaos. Mallory locked herself in a conference room with 3 junior comms managers, her voice barely audible through the soundproof walls Jenna texted from legal. "They're drafting a counterstatement Grayson wants to blame sabotage." I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Grayson wasn't sabotaged. He was outplayed. Building power quietly means no one sees it coming until it's done. They don't know where it began or how far it spread. They just realize they've lost control. That's the difference between noise and clarity. Venturon had noise, I had clarity by 12:20 p.m. Financial Chronicle hailed it as the boldest silent shift in enterprise tech since Altivix's 2011 pivot. By 1:15 p.m., Trevant's inbox overflowed with over 70 partnership requests and investor meeting invites, none of which we accepted not yet. Not until our foundation was rock solid, meanwhile, the clients, Yuki, Linda, Louise, remained completely silent. No press quotes, no explanatory tweets. They had no need to justify their choice. They simply chose differently, and they chose me. Around 2 p.m., Rahim arrived at the hotel suite carrying a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne and a printed copy of the press release, like old-school startup founders. "You framing this?" he asked with a grin. "Maybe I'll tattoo it instead," I replied. He handed me a manila folder. Also, the financials. They're already transferring implementation budgets to the accounts. Jenna triple-checked everything, no hiccups. I nodded, exhaling, not relief, but recognition. This wasn't luck. It was orchestrated, every move deliberate, every conversation planted, every client nurtured. I hadn't taken Venturon's clients. I'd earned their trust while Venturon was busy playing power games and handing out empty titles. That evening, a voicemail from an unknown number caught my attention. Grace and I listened once, then deleted it before it finished. He didn't shout or plead. He asked the question they all ask when they realize what they've lost. Was this personal? Of course it was. It was professional strategic overdue. That night, I stood by the window overlooking the city. The skyline no longer felt cold. It felt earned. They took everything with noise. I took it all back in silence. No announcements, no revenge speeches. Just a name on a page, Marin Blake, CEO. The world watching, not because I demanded it, but because the results spoke louder than any words ever could. The conference room at the Global Tech Summit in Munich was lined with deep blue velvet curtains and polished glass tables. Luxury masking desperation at 9 a.m., Grayson Hart stood at the front of room C, 214, flanked by his newest interim strategy lead and two stiffly suited compliance managers. The buzz outside was loud. Venturon had leaked news of a breakthrough partnership with a rising Eastern European cloud firm, hoping to signal recovery after the Trevant collapse rattled investor confidence. Only insiders knew the truth. This was no breakthrough. It was a lifeline, already unraveling. From the back corner, I watched them set up the projection screen. My entrance was unannounced. I didn't need spectacle, only precision. Grayson spoke softly with the prospective partner's CEO, a broad-shouldered man named Marek Dvorsky. I'd met him once before in Prague over a long dinner sharing ideas about sovereign cloud hosting. He didn't remember me yet, but he would. At 9:15 a.m., I stepped forward, calm and confident in a slate gray blazer and simple dress, every step stitched with assurance. Marek looked up, blinked. Marin. Grayson turned, the color draining from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. I walked to the table and extended my hand. Good to see you again. Marek took it firmly, puzzled but intrigued. I represent Trevant, I said. I'm the other party in this negotiation. Silence rippled through the room like shattered glass. Grayson's jaw tightened. This is a closed session, Marin. No, I said evenly. This is a joint session. Trevant was invited after your firm submitted conflicting statements about global rollout capabilities. The summit organizers demand transparency and partner alignment. Marique nodded slowly. As the pieces connected, I opened my folder and laid out Trevant's infrastructure map. Clean, updated, tailored to his firm's expansion plan. Our model was leaner, faster, tested. His CTO had already approved specs privately. Pending this final review, Marek said to Grayson, we understand your position, but we cannot afford another misalignment like Trident. Grayson interrupted. That was sabotage. I didn't flinch. That was foresight. I gave them a choice. They chose clarity over politics. Grayson turned to Marek. You really want to work with someone who abandons her company mid-deal? I smiled, sharp and composed. I don't abandon ships, I rebuild them, without the ones who drilled holes. Silence filled the room. Then Marek glanced at his legal team. We'll proceed with dual review, he said, and I want Marin's proposal considered primary. Grayson stepped back, looking struck I could have taken the win quietly and left him to simmer in the tension. But I didn't come for a quiet victory. I came for the dignity they tried to steal. I met Grayson's gaze, steady and cold. One condition. The room froze. I'll proceed with joint infrastructure, only if you're not involved. I don't deal with people who fire their architects mid-flight. The silence deepened. Marek hesitated briefly, then nodded. I respect that. Grayson's face collapsed for a moment. I saw not a CEO, but a man realizing the game was no longer his to play. He left without a word. Outside, Munich streets buzzed under the late spring sun, tourists crowding cafe tables. I walked to a courtyard where Rahim and Jenna waited, coffees in hand, eyes glued to the summit's live feed. "Heard you dropped a bomb," Jenna smirked. "No bombs," I said, sitting beside them. Just balance restored. Rahim raised his cup to the architect. I didn't raise mine. I wasn't finished. But for the first time in years, I felt my name needed no defense because I'd walked into the room they tried to shut me out of and made it mine. At 7:45 a.m., the next day, I entered Trevant headquarters as morning sun poured through tall windows, casting long beams across clean, polished floors. The space was quiet, not cold, but humming with calm energy, the kind born of purpose. On the far wall, a new plaque gleamed, etched in brushed steel. Trevant, founded by Marin Blake. Not buried in footnotes, not hidden behind team credits, not erased or replaced. There, bold, final, visible. I stood before it, fingers brushing its surface, recalling every time my name had been drafted in, then cut before meetings. Every proposal where I did the work, but someone else presented the slides. Every press release I'd edited that never credited me. They took so much of my voice over the years, but they never truly silenced me. I no longer had to raise my voice. The building spoke for me. Upstairs, I entered the boardroom. Not the cold, chrome-heavy style Venturon once favored, but a space warmed by wood tones, soft lighting, and walls designed to encourage dialogue rather than command it. Linda Clark from Eurocom sat on one side, reviewing an integration timeline with Rahim. Luiz Mata appeared in a video call nearby, laughing about Brazil's latest soccer match. Yuki Asano had sent a thoughtful gift. 3 bonsai trees, one for each continent Trevant now supported. I took the head of the table, but it didn't feel like a throne. It felt like harmony. That afternoon, a quiet notification popped up on my phone. Mallory Hart had resigned, effective immediately. No press releases, no interviews, just a single line buried in industry trades. Sources cited a shift in leadership following the collapse of key partnerships. Nobody asked where she went. Nobody really cared. An hour later, another alert arrived. Grayson Hart was removed from the Venturon board by unanimous vote. No scandal, no lawsuit, no public meltdown, just removal. A slow, silent unraveling that mirrored exactly how they'd tried to erase me. Only now, they were disappearing. Without sound, without legacy, without defenders, I didn't cheer or celebrate. This was never about revenge. It was something simpler, more sacred. Reclamation. Later that day, I signed the final consolidated contract, a unified agreement binding all 3 Trident partners under a multi-regional architecture. I didn't hesitate. I didn't dwell on the $1.5 billion, or the headlines, or any vindication. I thought only of my name, Marin Blake, and how for the first time I was signing exactly who I was. No fear, no masks, no illusions. I wasn't someone waiting to be recognized anymore. I was remembered by default, because this time, the foundation bore my name carved into its frame. If you've ever had your name stripped from a project you poured yourself into, if you've stayed silent while someone else claimed your credit, if you were told to just let it go when really they meant let yourself go, hear this. You're not invisible. You're not replaceable. You're not done. Some battles aren't won with noise or fire. They're won with focus, with stillness, with time. And when the moment comes, let your presence speak louder than your pain. If Marin's journey resonates with you, if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or erased, don't stay silent like this video. Leave a comment and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories of the quiet rising, hit subscribe. We're just getting started.